Tobi, thanks so much for joining me. Welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you here. And I'm really delighted to have you on the show to talk about awork, what you're doing. And I'm sure the audience is very intrigued to hear about what you're doing, especially now with the big race.
Yeah, Nick, I'm happy to be here. Happy to speak about awork, about what we have in store. Also a great day. So let's kick it off.
Awesome. Fantastic. So then, to begin with, before we jump into awork specifically, I always like to talk to founders first about their background, about what they did before coming to their current venture. So can you tell us a little bit about Tobi?
Tobi, I'm German originally. I was born in Düsseldorf, if that means anything to anyone on the podcast. I then moved to Switzerland, however, spent a couple of years in Switzerland, moved to Sweden. So I do speak Swedish as well, a bit of a
Very nice.
Nordics fan. And then came to Germany to become an engineer. So I'm a mechanical engineer, actually. And during university, maybe that's interesting for some, I realized I'm never going to be a professional mechanical engineer. It's just too repetitive. I enjoy understanding things, but then really having to repeat the same engineering process over and over again was just too mechanical. If that makes sense. So I took a look at business, was on my way to become a business consultant, and then met my co-founders, and we started a business about 12 years ago now, in software, so a B2B SaaS company. It used to be called HQ Labs, and now they're called the Every Group, and we built that company for about 10 years to be, I guess, the number one ERP for creative agencies in the German-speaking market. And had about 40 people in the end, and sold the business to a private equity fund in 2021, and immediately decided to go again. And that was that's really a dream situation, I guess, for a lot of founders. At least it was for us, because then we had a bit of capital. We had the know-how how to build SaaS. We focused on a similar group of clients, so the ICP somewhat similar. We had a team. We were able to hire back a couple of our leadership team who went to Silicon Valley for a couple of years, or to the Berlin startup scene. And so that was sort of the perfect moment to start again. And for myself, I've been doing different things. Started as a developer, so the three of us just huddling around a university table and hacking our first code. Fortunately, none of that is left in any application that is on Loudgate. And then I was the first one to actually pick up the phone and did outbound sales for a while, built the first cold calling sales team that we had. Then I went into marketing, did performance marketing for a couple of years, built our attribution setup and the stack that we work with today. And then I transitioned into the CRO role, as it was probably meant to be. And I usually just do team building, fundraising. So those are my top priorities at the moment.
Awesome. Not bad at all. So with your founding team right now, it's effectively the same suite of founders from the previous company in awork?
Yeah, there's three of us, my co-founders, Nils, Lucas, and me. And over the years, we developed into different directions, even though we all started out writing code. Lucas is now head of product and CPO, so he really focuses. He's the guy with the product vision, all the way down to designing how our confirm buttons look. That is all his vision. And then Niels has gone more into the tech and finance combination. Sometimes I get sort of a weird looks when I tell them, well, my co-founder is CFO and he also does a lot of our back-end infrastructure. But that's just his combination of expertise. He actually, that's really what he studied at university, and he's been in that split the entire time. And I moved into marketing and sales, and that has been working really well for us, because we have different backgrounds and different fields of expertise that we can really focus on without being in each other's way. And that's just worked really well. So, yeah.
Lovely. Very cool. So it really wasn't long then from selling your previous company to then setting up awork. How did that all happen?
Yeah, that was immediate. There was literally it was the same split second, the same notary appointment, because we did a bit of a carve out. So we had already started developing a new product with the old company, and we separated part of the team to really work on the new product. And then when the exit really became a sort of went into the formal process of due diligence and everything. We did a bit of a carve out. So we carved out the new product with part of the team in the same moment, and then started the new company from there. So the idea was already very much in progress when we sold the first business.
That idea, so you were carving out something which had actually already been built. It was something of an MVP. What did that look like at that time?
Yeah, so maybe just so that makes sense in sort of the bigger context. So the first product that we built, HQ Labs, was an ERP, so handling financial processes, right? Quotes, invoices, time tracking, charge rates, all of that, very financially oriented for creative agencies. And then at some point we realized we want to go back to our very roots, which is help teams work better, and especially those teams who are thinking about what the work of the future means. More distributed, more remote, with less strict borders between companies and organizations. So a lot of work sharing going on at times where, as is the case nowadays, post-pandemic, our personal lives and our professional lives are just more integrated because we spend more time at home. We just need to make all of that work. And there's no software tool focusing on that and helping those teams work better. So in the end, awork is a work management tool. We're in a market with Asana and Monday and ClickUp and all the big Silicon Valley players. But we're the ones really focusing on making those new team processes work. And we're focusing again on creatives, consultants, all of those people working in project business, professional services. So there's a bit of a similarity. We knew the client group, we knew what kind of software tools and what stacks they were using because we've been selling software to them for the last 10 years or so. So the jump wasn't that big. And then we took all the lessons learned from the first business and just started with a very lean product. And we had that product in place. It had the first couple of customers on the platform when we did the carve out. So we knew there was an opportunity here. We knew there was a product that could work. We had some initial feedback. And at that point, we also had the opportunity to sell the old company, which was not a given. But for once, we were a bit lucky. I mean, the end of 2021 was a good place to be if you were thinking about selling your company. Very, very different from today. So that worked well. And then we just seized the opportunity. And I guess since there's probably a lot of founders on listening to us and watching us, I guess seizing the opportunity when it's there is just something that has been moving us along over the last years so many times. It's not always that you plan for something to work out exactly the way that it works out, but sometimes there's this opportunity where things align, and then you have to be quick about just going for it. And that's how we ended up carving out that business, starting again. Obviously, there's some contractual basis for not competing with our old company and things like that, but it worked out really well.
I was actually just going to touch upon that. But then also that private equity crowd that bought out your previous company, were they not looking at what you were doing with awork, what became awork, and said, "Oh, yeah, we want this"?
Yeah, absolutely. Although for them, they have a very specific business model, which I like that. It was part of the reason why we were looking forward to actually have them on board and to take over the old business, because they are focusing on software niches that are very fragmented. So if you just a bit of a background about that ERP for creatives, at least in the DACH region, there's about 30 or 35 different products on the market. Too many. So even the top ones, and we were definitely among the either one or two top vendors, growth was slow simply because the market was so crowded. And they're focusing on that, and they are building a group out of the company. So they're not the every group. I think they've just crossed about 80 people in the group. And they're developing that, so they're consolidating the market quite a bit now. And we had to obviously agree to not compete directly with the all that financial admin and ERP area that we used to be in. So we don't do that, and that was not the goal for us as well. So that was fine. And since that is their business model, they don't do any venture cases. And awork is still a traditional venture case. We just closed the Series A round, so we're on a path that is very classic SaaS VC orientation, and that was not for them.
So let's dive a little bit deeper then into awork and that problem that you're tackling. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that, and honing down in on what the problem exactly is? And I suppose you mentioned competitors earlier on. What is it that they have not addressed that it remains a problem that needs to be addressed by awork?
Right. So first things first, who are our clients? So again, a lot of creative people, consultants, architects, web developers who work in project-oriented professional services. That's the need.
Okay.
And these teams usually are very modern about how they think work should be handled these days. And knowledge work is changing so much, right? So as I mentioned earlier, we are in a situation where more than ever before, we have to juggle between personal organization, professional organization, organization across team and company boundaries. These things are just changing very quickly. And those changes are mostly ignored by all the existing players in the space. There is no way to integrate, for example, to give a very simple example, how do you integrate your private personal calendar with your work appointments if all of those need to happen at the same time and your project management needs to know when you're available and when you're not, without you double booking everything in two calendars and sharing one of them with your family and the other one with your colleagues and the third one maybe with an external partner that you have to handle. But still, in the end, you're supposed to deliver an accurate workload forecast and deliver your deadlines on time. That it doesn't make sense. We can build tools for that, and that's something that awork does. We combine all of these things and then deliver a real professional work management solution that is comparable to the things that Asana or Monday, etc. do, but much more focused on the people that actually need to work with these tools in the end. Yeah.
Well, how big is this market that you're going after?
So it really depends on these markets are like onions, right? So the core of it is all the creative agencies and consultants of the world. They're sort of the core. In Europe, there's about 400 to 600,000 of these companies and teams. So that's a bunch, more than enough for us to grow. And then if you grow beyond that, not even if you grow and become more international, but if you grow to the slightly larger professional services sector, that number triples roughly. So that's a pretty big market. And it is driven by the trends in new work that we see at the moment and by teams really worrying about how to design a workplace that people don't silently quit from, which is another one of these big trends that we've been seeing over the last months. And it's not just about salaries. It's not just about the hard facts of the jobs that people quit. It's about how these teams are organizing. And we do a study once per year. It's called the Work Happiness Report. We actually ask 1,000 people in a representative study in the German-speaking markets what it is that makes them happy at work. And the interesting thing is that one thing that comes back again and again and again, very reliably so, is how to organize personal and professional life at the same time. And teams, how do teams react to that? How flexible are they? How well organized and managed are they? Is one of the major drivers of how happy people are in those teams, and if they are actually willing to stay. And willing to stay is a nice keyword here because about 70% of all respondents, and this is knowledge work alone. We're not talking about the industries where people are really stressed. We're talking about creatives, consultants, etc. 70% of them are still thinking actively about quitting their jobs at the moment because they're not happy. And as just about as many would be willing to give up part of their salary in order to be happier at work. Happier. So throwing money at the problem is not the way to go, because obviously people would rather be just, happier at work. And now how does that cycle back to software and infrastructure? Well, organization in an environment that is changing quickly is one of the key things that you have to have in place. If everything is chaos and your tool stack and your structure doesn't match the communication, we're super flexible that everything is organized and you always know what's going to happen in this creative agency that has stressed people and jobs. Well, if you don't have that in place, then people are just going to remain unhappy and think about quitting.
This is really interesting. This point of happiness and quiet quitting as well, this trend that we're all seeing and we're all hearing about. So you're actually kind of going, it sounds like, a level deeper. You're not just providing a tool. It's almost like you're riding a wave of the change that's existing or taking place across this knowledge worker market. and you're saying, okay, it's not just about the tools, it's about the process, it's about the structure that you have. And here is a tool that fits into how you should be working. Is that fair?
That is very accurate. And for us, we consider ourselves to be part of the product. So we're trying with awork. We've very consciously decided for how to set up awork, how to set up our team structure, what rules to introduce. We leaned heavily on things that you probably even know rules more intricately than me. So we copied a couple of things from Silicon Valley culture that we enjoy, but we mixed that with a couple of the things that we think in European setups work much better. The way that we handle holidays, workations, flexibility, etc. That is much more up to date, if you ask me.
Sure.
So, and we mixed all that and we built a culture out of that, and we consider awork as a team, as a company, to be as much the solution provider for the tool stack that will help you get there, but also a bit of the inspiration. We hope to be a model case of how a team can actually grow in these times. It's why we set up the team in a hybrid way. We do care about the head office that we have in Hamburg. It's a really nice place to be. It screams awork whenever you enter the place. It's also just a place where it's very nice to spend time. Because we think that is really important for people to meet, to build culture there. But we're also a hybrid team. We have people from Brazil all the way to Italy, and bring them together from time to time, about 4 times a year. Everybody joins us in Hamburg. But making all of that work is also something that a lot of companies still struggle with, especially creative.
I'm really interested in this topic of remote, hybrid, in-office approach. Can you talk a little bit more about that and the approach that you've taken with respect to hybrid, and also what you've seen in other companies that maybe does not work or does work, and how awork fits into that?
Right. So we've experimented with that a bit, obviously. So our setup is we're about 35-ish people at the moment. And about 15 to 20 of them are based in and around Hamburg. And for them, the mix of office and home office or remote work is usually 2 days a week at the office and 3 days a week wherever they want. And one of those 2 days is Thursdays. It's awork team day. Everybody's at the office on Thursdays. Now, I've had a lot of discussions about that with other founders and just people who thought that to be strict, and were asking us about why do you guys do that? Why do you introduce these rules again? I thought you guys were the new work people who were all about flexibility, etc. But then again, hybrid work and remote work is also just a management, right? We're trying to create a structure that in the end is very flexible and very nice for people to work in, but we're also trying to create team culture, because that is what drives a lot of our progress. That is what drives development. That's what drives innovation. And in order to do that, we believe that one shared space that we could spend time in and together is just an important part of that. So we create those instances. We create events where you actually know you come to the office today, you're going to meet everybody. People look forward to that because of it. So that's why we introduce rules for that. And for everybody who's remote, we bring them to Hamburg 4 times a year. Once in summer for a summer offsite for a couple of days where we really spent a couple of really intense days together for a Christmas party, and then 2 weeks in spring and autumn where we do similar things, and that also helps. But every meeting obviously is hybrid. We invest in the infrastructure. We have some rules for how to handle a hybrid or remote meeting for the setup that is appropriate for that entire experience not to suck, because hybrid meetings can be the worst, right? And there's a couple of things that people just don't care about. For example, a lot of teams allow their hybrid or remotees to join with bad equipment, bad internet, bad microphone, headphones, all of that. But if you do, then you're setting that whole thing up to really suck for everybody involved, and we try to really avoid that. So we experiment with tech quite a lot.
Where have you seen other companies go wrong when it comes to remote or hybrid?
So that's one of the things. So you really have to, these hybrid meetings and settings and hybrid projects, you can't just transfer fully remote or fully on-site projects and processes into that hybrid setting. It takes extra effort. And a lot of companies are just ignoring that, or don't want to hear that, or aren't willing to put in that extra effort. And if you don't, it's going to fail, because the experience is going to be significantly worse than either extreme. But again, getting back to our report, the teams that are the happiest are actually the ones working in a hybrid setup.
Interesting.
And again, it's about choice. People have the choice to be on site in the office, meet others, share social interaction with their teams, enjoy being in a team that has a shared value setup in person. But then they also have a great flexibility of not being there from time to time, or taking a workation or whatever. And that flexibility is what makes people so happy at work. And if you want that, if you want your teams to be happy, then you're just going to have to put in the effort. If you don't, it's not that doesn't happen just automatically. And I think a lot of teams ignore that. And then the setup, the tech setup is bad. The infrastructure isn't there. There's no management process ensuring that people actually adhere to that culture. Because if then some people just ignore it and go fully remote in a setup that is meant to be hybrid, it breaks. So you have to have rules. It's still management. It's still not, it's not kindergarten just because you're hybrid. And the last one is then not investing into the office anymore, because in that whole setup, you can't then suddenly start ignoring the office and the office setup and the culture that is created on site. So you add complexity to your process, and you need to take care to make that work.
Can you tell us more about the solution? How, if I'm a user of awork, what can I expect when I sign up and when I'm using it on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So first of all, you can expect the basic work management stack. So you can create projects, invite your team, put them into different organizational units, whatever they may be called it in your team. You can then use templates to create projects that include tasks and deadlines and milestones, and you can create to-do lists and Kanban boards and the Gantt chart like timeline, things like that. You can integrate your calendar, you can do time tracking, and then once you've integrated your calendar, you can combine all of that. You can open up your laptop or whatever on Monday morning, and you can see your complete calendar overview, be that personal or professional, and you can just drag and drop things from your projects into your weekly schedule to make your week work. And then in the end, you can transform them back into track time, track progress, give an update, a status update. So that's sort of the basic infrastructure that you can expect. And what that combines is professional project management with that whole team scheduling aspect and the time track. And that is the perfect combination for these professional services and project-oriented teams. In terms of interface and what makes that different from other tools out in the market, awork has remained absolutely brilliantly simple, much more so than a lot of the big players are at the moment. So if you look at the Asana's Mondays ClickUps, they are going after the enterprise market opportunity. And as a founder and from a business perspective, kudos, that's where the big bucks are. That sounds like a great opportunity. But from an end user perspective, I just keep watching them go into complexity wherever they can, because they need to handle those large accounts. And by now it shows in all of those products, they're just extremely complex. Whereas a lot of the introductions of tools, and that doesn't just include work management, but all of the modern work tool stack, people just over-engineer. People tend to over-engineer their tool stack a lot. They tend to invest in solutions that may be fine 10 years down the road, but currently they just stress their end users. So a lot of these introductions and a lot of these tool projects, they fail because of complexity still. And awork just goes against that as much as we can.
I love it. Very interesting. Okay, you're taking a really different tack. So then when it comes to product decisions and what you're going to build next, it sounds like you shy away from just more features. So how is it that you do make product decisions, and what is it that, how do you decide what will go into the product next based on, what is your sort of philosophy on what should go in next?
Yeah. So yeah, we do shy away from just more features. That is absolutely correct. And just to highlight this year's roadmap, there is one big bet in there that we're going to take towards the fourth quarter, I guess, which is all about cross-company work sharing. So that's the Pandora's box of complexity that we're going to open, cross-company permissions management and things like that. So for once, there is a project coming up this year that is going to add complexity to the product, and we're going to have to be really, really careful how to slowly introduce that into the entire product. But until then, everything that's on the roadmap is just making existing features better, simplifying, reworking, refactoring, removing friction from the interfaces, finding all the little quirks that have sort of slipped into the product over time. Finding the exact spots where people break off in their workflows, and what we can do about that in the product. So we're focusing much, much more on improvements in the product than on actually adding complexity and features. That does mean sometimes that there are cases out there that we simply cannot help because we don't have the complexity that, admittedly, for some cases, especially when you're in very large organizations, you need. Otherwise, they don't work. We know that. And we're very sorry that we can't help those companies. They're probably better served by Asana. But for everybody else, they will have a much smoother experience. And how do we find these places? We do user testing, very traditional. We have a backlog of all the recommendations and feedbacks from our support staff and everything that our clients just submit to us. There's literally thousands of little things in that backlog. And our product team actually goes through each and every single one of them and puts them into categories, and then we bundle them by product area. So at the moment, we're reworking the way we handle task structure. We'll focus on time tracking and the smoothness and speed of it next, because there's a couple of things that we want to improve. So we're then bundling them by feature area, then tackling them over a couple of months, and then we'll reorient.
It's very cool. Thinking more about then that functionality that you're not going after and maybe sits outside of awork, does that make you think a bit differently about integrations, and integrations being an important part of how awork is going to function in the future?
Yeah, they are an important part because, and that also, we're a small company, right? We cannot invent the entire Office tool stack or whatever Google Suite. So things like video conferencing, the chat tools, so Teams and Slack, and tools like that, they've cracked that part of the tool stack. It works really well. It wouldn't make any sense for us to try to rebuild Slack. And then we get asked about that a lot. Like, is there a chat in awork? Well, yeah, even if there were a chat, it would be so much worse than anything that you could do in Slack or Teams. It just doesn't make any sense at all. But then again, we'll have to integrate with those tools in a very, very convenient way. For example, to take the Slack or Teams example, we have a bi-directional integration there. So you can actually create tasks, add comments, start time tracking, and things like that directly from your Slack channels, and vice versa. So integrations like that make a lot of sense. What we don't do is build a huge catalog of very superficial integrations. Because again, we think that just adds friction. It suggests that we are very, very much in line with all of those products on the integrations list, but usually it's just some very basic show some data kind of integration. We don't do those usually. We have done deep integrations that work really well and that sort of create this ecosystem of what you need to organize a modern team.
With your customers that you have right now, how do you how long do they tend to hang around? And what is the typical size of these accounts?
A while. The typical size, so the average client has about 10 users. That's the average, with a very long tail of smaller teams, obviously. And then the largest teams that we handle have thousands of users, actually. So those are really the largest ones that we have. Anything between 10 and 100 is exactly the sweet spot that we focus on. Up to 500 is still very fine, and beyond that is special cases. And they tend to stick around for I mean, we're not that old, right? So we have clients who joined in the first months. They're still here. Churn is really low. If you look at typical SaaS metrics, especially net churn has been negative since we started. So the portfolio is growing much more than people are leaving again. If people leave, then those are usually single user use cases. We don't have them at the moment. You can, if you love awork, you can use it, on your own. But in the end, we're still a tool for organizing teams, and all of that scheduling, etc., is something that only makes sense once you have 3 people in an awork workspace. Otherwise, all those features are there in add complexity, which is exactly what we don't want in a place where you won't need it. So a lot of freelancers join, they try out awork, they love the interface, but then they come back to us and tell us it's too complex, guys. And we agree.
Yeah.
So sad to see them go, but we agree, and that's something that might change going forward. So that is one part of the product that we're going to address: reevaluating, sharing, integrating externals, service providers, freelancers, etc. is something that we're going to revisit.
How do you go about acquiring your customers?
We're really performance marketing driven, which sometimes seems unusual because a lot of tools in our space are very proud of being completely product driven. But to be honest, our space is really competitive, and our competitors, they do have marketing powers that we just cannot match. So we have to be clever in some spaces. And to be honest, performance marketing is one of them. We're really good at that. We're really good at marketing attribution. We really know what channels work. We have a very early scoring system for leads that we buy from those channels. So currently about 80% of our business is performance marketing driven. It can't stay that way forever because that's a lot of budget that we invest. But that's how it works at the moment. And then they sign up for a free trial. There's a 14-day free trial. So anybody who wants to try out awork, do go ahead. And if anybody wants to, they can get into contact with our sales team, and then we help them onboard, find the value in awork. So a very traditional free trial SaaS process that we have.
I was just going to touch on that. So if you're not necessarily going after the enterprise clients, enterprise clients is typically where you need that big sales team, business development team, the whole works. Your sales team, do you see that growing out, still going after that same sort of typical license base, or is that going to change in time as you, draw down the performance marketing?
Yeah, I think our sales team just has different priorities or a different amount of interaction with every lead that comes in. So at the moment, we do have about 3,000 leads coming in every month. So that's a large number, and we do have 3 people in sales. So they can only cover a very short, a very, very small percentage of the inflow that we have in terms of leads. And they do that very routinely. So there are a couple of questions that just sometimes our clients want to talk about. They want to have an opinion. They want to have a quick chat about their setup in awork, if that is best practice or not. So these are 30 minutes, maybe 60-minute calls that help our users a lot to understand awork at a moment where they're trying to decide if this is the tool they want to stick with for the next years. But they're not in-depth sales interactions where we follow up a ton of times and analyze the entire buying center and sort of do all that. Because usually, to be honest, we don't have to, which is a great thing. So our funnel is very low touch, even though there is an element of sales involved. And I think that does make a lot of sense. I think some SMB-focused software companies ignore that too much because the usual wisdom out there is if you're below the 1,000 euro MRR or $1,000 MRR ticket, don't invest in that part of the process because it's a waste of money anyways. But I think they're wrong to some degree, because if you standardize the personal interaction as much as we do, you still add a lot of value, and conversion rate increases so much because people just find the product easier that it's absolutely worth it. So will that function grow? Yes, but only with lead inflow.
Based on then the amount of leads that this team is getting, they can't get through all those potential customers. So how do they make decisions then as to who they should talk to as opposed to who to send on just an email or an ebook?
We score our leads. So there's when people sign up to awork, we give them a score based on all the information that we have. That can be, is this a business email address? Is it a mobile phone or a desktop sign up? Things like that. But also things that information people leave us while signing up. Do they actually want to get into contact? Things like that. And we developed the score, and based on that score, we can rank the leads by priority, based on do they actually want to get in touch, how large are they from an industry where we know they sometimes need help getting their processes set up at the beginning. And and we just create a ranking, and then we try to get as far down the list as we can, and as far as it makes sense. Because for 1, 2, 3 user use cases, they don't need our personal help because awork is really simple for them to set up, and also it would make sense for us financially.
You've recently raised quite a bit of money. Can you talk just a little bit about that, and then what your plans are with that investment?
Yep. Yeah, we just raised a 5 million euro Series A. Very happy about that. It's not a given these days, especially in a crowded SaaS space. A lot of VCs have become very careful, which has dragged this process out for us as well. Maybe that's helpful for some of the people still fundraising out there to hear. We kept at it for about 6 months. And that's fine. I guess that's part of the deal. If you're in fundraising, especially for Series A at the moment, we found really cool partners. A French fund, Hynes, is the lead investor, and the Swiss fund as a co-investor, driving that European expansion. So for this year, I think we're still going to be focused on the DACH region with a couple of experiments left and right. But then beyond that, European expansion is on the roadmap, and that is how we're trying to build the team at the moment. That is how we're building the infrastructure and everything that goes with it, and that's one of the focus areas for the next years.
Excellent. Are you able to share a post-money valuation, or is that not public?
We didn't make it public.
Okay, fair enough. I had to ask. And so then with this investment, you're going to be growing out the team. If anybody is watching this and they're very interested in your product and what you're doing, what sort of roles are going to be opening up over the next 12 months or so?
Yeah, very different functions. I think we have about 15 or 18 positions open at the moment. They're on the website awork.io/jobs. And some of the most interesting ones, we have a very, I'd love to do the job. There's a growth marketing position open that will get their own team based, consisting of there's a growth engineer, a UX designer, performance marketing, and then somebody sort of coordinating those growth projects all the way from the ad funnel to the in-product experience people have when they first sign up, to really get into that whole growth process. I think that's a really interesting one. Then connected to that, there's UX design and growth engineering open. We have developer positions open. If you're an Angular a specialist, do check those out. They're really interesting as well. We do hire in sales, so there's an account executive position open. Really different areas. The brand design is still open, which is also super interesting because we are a pretty design-focused brand. Also a fun one. We don't take things all too seriously, so that might be fun. All of those.
Very cool. And then are there any sort of partnerships that you're looking for at the moment to help grow out the business?
And with partnerships, you mean
whether it's integrations or whether it's as you're looking to expand in terms of your footprint or with customer base, any other partnerships that you're looking for in that side?
So what we actually have a structured program for is people who are consulting in those areas. So people who are consulting in team organization, especially with a focus on new work practice or just new forms of organization. We love to partner with people who really help teams update their structure, their organizational structure, in any way possible. And those are the best partnerships, because then at the same time, they can introduce a tool set that matches those ideas, and we can provide best practice to them, so we can actually also upgrade their consulting services. So those are always nice partnerships that we actually have a structured program for. But anybody else who's interested in that field of team organization is welcome to just, send me a message. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find.
Brilliant. Tobi, I think I've asked everything that I had on my mind. Is there anything that I haven't touched on that you're saying, God, I wish Nick had just asked this, or there's something that you wanted to send out to the world?
That was pretty comprehensive. I think I'm good.
We touched all bases.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much, Tobi. It was a real pleasure. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do now over the next 12 months, 24 months, and where the platform, the tool is going to go, and seeing how you're going to be changing how people work. Thank you so much for jumping on the call. And I hope we get to chat again soon.
Thanks, Nick. Have a good one.